Hello everyone, I'm Rahul Kadyan, and let's get to the state of DX. This talk is a summary of what we have been working on for last couple of months for improving the developer experience of writing Vue.js component. On the agenda, we have major DX features in Vue throughout the history. Then we'll briefly go over active efforts for improving developer experience in IDEs. Then what is the Vue DX project all about? And what's the status? Then I'll talk about few new projects that are added to Vue DX in last month and what are our future plans. So let's start with DX in Vue. Vue was introduced with reactive data binding, which means synchronizing state between JavaScript and DOM much easier. When combined with its declarative string templates, authoring component was objectively better, and this led to a single file component, which is an HTML-like file that houses your rendering logic and your programmatic logic. Putting everything in a non-standard file, which doesn't work directly in browser, required us to write a compiler that can process this into a JavaScript file. So the compilation process allowed us to do more things than we initially hoped for. Later on, we introduced scope style, a way to contain CSS inside a component and prevent leaking outside and affecting other pieces of the application. It also led us to static analysis. The tree structure, the tree structure of templates similar to HTML allowed us to analyze pieces of components and optimize them so that you get best performance out of the box. In 3.0, we introduced Composition API, a more programmatic way of writing reactive pieces without binding them to the component API. That led us to script setup, a minimal way of writing components without any boilerplate of the Vue component options API. All these features have made have made some of our tasks easier, made developers' life better, and we could move faster. But all those features come with some baggage. There is some meta information that is embedded in how we write our components in Vue. Like SFC makes certain assumptions that it's a Vue component, there's a template and the script. Script setup assumes that the part of the script is actually a Vue component, and it makes some assumptions. And these assumptions are native to Vue, but IDs don't understand them. So Vue developer experience was improving in terms of writing application faster, but it was also getting more difficult because IDs were not providing relevant help when authoring this component. Tooling ecosystem recently also changed. Now TypeScript have become a de facto standard in JavaScript industry. TypeScript have allowed much better IDs support by providing type suggestions, auto-completion, and inference. You can quickly look the structure of an object, or what kind of props a component accept, or what kind of parameters the function accepts. That definitely improves developer productivity, and you can move faster. Then recently, JavaScript community got ES build, which is a very fast built to JavaScript bundling tool that can export modern JavaScript ES modules. That that also led us to another build tool, Beat, which is a modern bundler and a dev server that doesn't actually bundle during development time. That gives us near instant startup, and all the changes we made in IDs are reflected in browser instantly. So build tooling has also evolved, but IDs, mainly for Vue, have been stuck in past. There have been active effort to bringing up ID support to the point where we have in JavaScript or TypeScript world. Uh, there are three main efforts. There's Vite, which utilizes VS Code's language server protocol uh, to provide ID support for Vue. That approach works well in Vue files, but it breaks when you are mixing TypeScript and JavaScript and Vue files in a project. Your TypeScript files don't understand what is there in Vue files, and experience becomes less difficult. Also, this we cannot provide refactoring, renaming, extracting logic by default in such a scenario. It doesn't understand the whole project, though it has been helpful in Vue files. Better also introduce terminal interface, so you can process your components in your CI. So whatever feature you are getting in your IDE, you can put in your build pipeline and test them out there. Then another approach is Follow. This is also built on language server protocol, but it focuses on speed, and in it has shipped much better support for Vue 3 composition API and script setup. Uh, the, yeah, but it doesn't have a CI counterpoint at the point. So you can have good experience in IDE, but you will lack that in your build pipelines. Then Vue DX uses builds upon TypeScript. So the core of the project is built on a TypeScript plugin that enhances the default TypeScript server to understand .vue files, and we'll go over this thing in a little bit in detail in some time. Vue DX also ships with a type check CLI, which you can hook in your build pipeline and run the same TypeScript check on your Vue component. These are few efforts that are actively trying to improve DX in Vue component. If you want to understand inner working of Vue DX, I presented at Vue Toronto in November. I'll share a link to the slides. So let's see what is Vue DX project. So this project contains of some extensions and some npm packages. If you want to use Vue DX for your IDE, right now it ships with two VS Code extensions. You can find them on marketplace by searching for name Vue or Vue DX. So the first one is a syntax highlight. So it is a static grammar, a text made grammar for ID, so that can highlight Vue files correctly. The goal of this extension is you get a text editor that supports syntax highlighting Vue without all other heavy features, all other heavy ID features. And this also allows you to experiment with language server implementations or other JavaScript extensions, not just Vue DX. It has extensive syntax information, and with current generic themes, you get correct highlights in interpolation. You get correct highlights for your tags. Attributes are highlighted differently than uh, directives. Dynamic attributes like with vbind are highlighted different from static attributes. Then event handlers, in similar fashion, highlighted slightly differently from your static attributes. V model gets same treatment. Then conditionals like vif and velse, etc. Loops v4 get a different highlight. So this is this you get with any theme, because the language definition provides all the information required for highlighting any generic language. And it also highlights the JavaScript expressions in arguments and custom directives. All in all, this is going to provide much more information for themes to highlight bits and pieces of template uh, that shoot well for Vue.js. It also includes Markdown support. So if you are writing Vue template, Vue SFC template components in your Markdown, you can tag that block with Vue and you get correct highlight there. You can also highlight just the template part by tagging that code block with Vue HTML. And if you want to put this thing in your blog or something, you can use the tool Siki. Uh, it it uses the same TextMate grammar to highlight code blocks on your website or blog. So so the goal for this extension or this is to ship a TextMate grammar that can be used in VS Code or other IDEs like Atom, Sublime, TextMate, obviously, and in build pipelines to highlight code in your blogs and websites. Another extension is Vue DX that ships a Typescript extension using the TS plugin. It builds upon the TypeScript extension built in VS Code and enhances it to support .vue file as if they are TypeScript or JavaScript files. In doing so, it ships module resolution, so you can import .vue file in your TSL.js files, and you will get correct path and correct type information. You can also have named imports from .vue files, and you will get all the features if you were importing it from a TS or JS file. You'll get hover info, you can click jump to it. Then it detects global components automatically. So if you have a component which is not registered in this component and there is a file with same name, it it infers that you could be using a global component. This can be configured using a config file so that it detects only the components you have actually registered. Then it also has path completions. So if you start typing in import statement source, it will provide suggestions for .vue files. It provides suggestions for named exports from .vue files. It also suggests component names from local directories and auto imports when you accept the suggestion. It auto imports named export from Vue files in JavaScript or TypeScript files. You can use quick fix feature of VS Code to get that. You can go to component definition by using go to definition feature of VS Code. You can go to definition of a prop by clicking on prop and using go to definition feature of VS Code. Then you can jump to symbols like data or props in the same component. You can rename a prop and it will reflect wherever it's used in the template in the script or in all the places where this component is used, in all the files where this component is used. And you can rename data, computed, or any other. You can rename data or computed properties, and they will be updated in script and template blocks. You can rename a component from import statement or from template, or you can rename a file and it will update in all the files where this component is being used. You can select expressions and extract them as functions, as methods, or computed properties. You can organize imports, so that will remove unused imports and combined imports from same sources. And all these features can be used in other IDs. So there's this project, COC for Vim and NeoVim, and I shipped same extension for Vim, so you can get all these features in Vim also. We'll try to add support for other IDs like Sublime and Atom in future. So these extensions are actually built on smaller packages. First one is Analyze. It's a static analyzer tool for Vue. So it parses your SFC into ASTs and tries to deduce information like what are the props defined in this component, or what are the events, what slots are being used, and generates information data structure for each SFC, which is used by the TypeScript plugin to provide completions and renames and all those features. But you can also use it to export this as a static file. So Analyze supports exporting component info as Vector data type, which is used by Vector to provide completion for Vue packages. Then it can also export as web types, which is used by JetBrains IDs like WebStorm or PHPStorm. So you can export your component information for your JavaScript, for your Vue component packages, and zip for vector data types and web types too. Then there is a compiler, which is similar to the built-in compiler of Vue.js. It builds on the base compiler. Instead of compiling your template into a JavaScript render function, it compiles it to a TypeScript render function, basically a TSX render function, so that it can be used for type checking your template. It is being used in TS plugin, obviously, but it can be used for other purposes like providing hover information on your code snippets on your blog, so you can pre-process it with TSX, get all the information, and statically put on your blogs. Then there is AST helpers. So majority of refactoring requires transforming template blocks. So these AST helpers can parse, traverse the AST, transform them, and write them back to templates. So it allowed to this allowed provide refactoring features as exporting a part of template as a different component. Then there is type check. It's basically a wrapper to provide all the features of VS Code extension in CI. So you can run it from command line or in your build pipeline. Then there is project config. It's a JSON file that's designed in a similar fashion how TS config works. So you can have preferences like where are your global components, or if do you prefer longhand syntax for your directives or shorthand, or what is your default language for script or template. those kind of things can be added to this file. This provides information to TS plugin to provide suggestions and experience that works best for you. Then there is a virtual file system. So TS plugin works by exploding a .vue file into multiple files that are kept in memory and represented as virtual files. So if you import a Vue file, you are importing the virtual file for the script block. And this allowed TS plugin to provide Typescript features without transforming or mutating the source code, which makes it much faster. Then obviously the TS plugin, which is a plugin for TS server to enable it to support .vue files. Let's get to the report. So a timeline of the project. I started working I started on this idea to improve developer experience in IDs. And initially I explored VS Code extensions, the language server protocol. Then I got into TypeScript, and I found that it is possibility to extend TS with plugins. Though plugin support is only in TS server, you cannot use plugins during build time. But tools like Vite and ES Build, which are generally used for building Vue projects, made it possible to use provide TS plugin for just for type checking and ID experience. So I started working on a prototype, got it working in a couple of months, but it needed a crucial configuration in TypeScript extension. It took a while. In May, we got that feature shipped in VS Code. So I started working on it, and I hit a boundary. I was transforming Vue files into TypeScript file, which was making it difficult because if you transform source code, you need to handle with source maps, and basically from and to conversion was taking a lot of time, and it introduced lots of complexity. So while solving that island, I found the virtual file system works best. So Vue file was exploded into small into files for each block, and added to the TypeScript program to provide type checking and completion information from that. I got a functional prototype in September that worked well for completions and uh, simple type checks in template. It was promising, so I started working on initial implementation. I, in October, in 3 months, I shipped an alpha version of the extension that supported all the features we discussed. Uh, like all the features I showed demos a few minutes ago. Today we have around 10,000 installations and counting. And in terms of what our TS plugin could do, so the TS server has an API that has 58 points of extension. Basically, the options object accepted as TS plugin has 58 functions, and right now we are only implementing 18. So there's a lot of possibilities that can be done. Then I try to release a relatively stable version of extension every month. Uh, so you can download these and you can search on VS Code Marketplace at Vue or Vue DX. And if you are using TypeCheck or any other packages, you can download latest packages. All the packages and extensions are released at once. Then we have an insiders release channel, which auto releases all the packages and extensions whenever a PR is merged. So if you want all the latest features or that are merged in Vue DX, you can search for insiders version of these extension on marketplace. New in Vue DX is a tool called Preview. It's a VS Code extension that allows quick prototyping of components and seeing what a component actually looks like. So it is built on Vite. So for any component, you can start if it's written in Vue 3 or supported by Vite. You can start a Vite server and see how a component would look like. Uh, it's zero config, so it should work out of the box for most of the things. But if you're using a style library and all, there is a config file where you can provide those things. Then it includes responsive rendering. You can have custom blocks named preview, and you can define devices like phone, tablet, or desktop, and it can render responsive version of the component. You It has a default preview component which has configurable width and heights, and uh, yeah, you can uh, test your responsiveness of your component right in VS Code. It also has request mocks. If you're using fetch, um, you can mock your API, mock the fetch calls with actual response. So you can declaratively define a setup element in your preview block where you can provide what would be the response returned by that API, and it intercepts the fetch calls and returns that. It's It also includes a test utils. Since you have all these preview blocks which render a version of component, you can use them in your tests. So if you are writing tests like importing and using Vue test utils to mount components, you can reuse your uh, previews using a helper function use. Uh, it's still not finalized. I'll rename it something else, maybe use preview or use story, something like that. You can import them by providing name of the preview, and yeah, you can still keep using the request mocks and other kind of request mocks along with the stubbing feature provided by Vue test utils. Basically, it makes much easier to see what your component looks like and reusing that piece of code for testing. In future, uh, we want to spend time on documentation. So there are lots of features and things you can do with TS plugin and other tools, but if something is not documented, it doesn't exist. So we get many times issues and queries about features and capabilities that already exist but are not documented, so people are having hard time for finding. So yeah, we will be spending next couple of months on documenting and sharing what you can do with this plugin, and we will also be expanding the team to get more help and ship more features. That is it. I'd like to thank sponsors who are helping me to spend time on Vue DX project. That's all for today. You can find me on Twitter by ZNCK0 and say hi to me or my dog Dash. Thanks a lot. I'm Rahul Kadyan, Vue.js core team member, and I work as software engineer at Grammarly. Say hi if you are looking for jobs at Grammarly. One last thing, I'm working on the side project, These Metrics. It's a privacy focused analytics tool. Try it out.